Ever dump a 47 message spiral into your group chat and then feel exactly the same afterward? Or worse, somehow even more upset? Yeah, same. Let's talk about why venting doesn't actually make us feel better, even when we think it will, and what to try instead. I'm your host, Emily Shutt, a professional certified coach with over a decade of experience helping smart, driven women untangle their drama around money, relationships, and well being. I'm here to help you do the same using science backed coaching tools rooted in cognitive behavioral theory, positive psychology, and peak performance. You'll leave with actionable steps for approaching your own life with clarity and confidence. Let's get into it. So, I had this interaction recently with someone in a position of authority at an organization I'm involved with. And to be honest, it rubbed me the wrong way, to put it mildly. In fact, I was enraged. So, I like to think of myself as reasonably self aware and experienced with emotional regulation. I try not to fly off the handle immediately when something upsets me. So when this went down, first things first, I did just let the feelings be there without really reacting to them. And that's something that I always recommend as a first step. I didn't storm out of the room or come back immediately with a scathing critique, which us Scorpios are actually very good at. Part of it was that I was genuinely surprised and confused about what was happening. Like it was all very fast, to be honest. And the other part was that I know instinctually at this point, if I'm feeling like I went from 0 to 100 in less than a second and I'm ready to, like, burn someone's house down, that is when I need to slow down and opt out of reacting right away. So that's what I did at first, like, I just let it happen and then I went home. But even hours later, I was still feeling really uneasy and agitated about the whole thing, and the more I tried to distract myself just watching TV or puttering around the house, the more irritated I felt. Sometimes we try to bypass the negative feelings because we're conditioned to believe that it's wrong for women to show any anger or basically be disagreeable in any way. So there's pressure to make it look like we're not bothered, but I was all the way bothered. I kept playing the whole conversation back on loop. One second, I was obsessed over whether I had actually done something wrong, even though I felt pretty confident that I had not. The next second, I was convinced that this person was just a jerk on a power trip and I was the unlucky victim of the day. Then I was spiraling into, should I escalate this or will that just make it worse? If I let it go, am I letting myself be a doormat by not saying something? Does that mean this guy, quote unquote, won? Like back and forth and back and forth. The churn was exhausting. We are taught to question ourselves and assume that fault always lies with us. And because I'm human, I went straight to the group chat and unloaded the entire play by play. Every tiny detail that wouldn't actually matter to anyone else realistically, but I felt like I needed to express it. And guess what? This may surprise you, but I did not feel better. In fact, I felt worse because now not only was I reactivating my body's response to the thoughts I was having about the experience, but I had the added layer of why has no one responded yet? I had only given them about 3 seconds to do so, but still, like, do they not agree with me? What is happening here? Do they think I'm being petty? Do they seriously think it was okay for that guy to treat me that way? I was getting really hyped up. Eventually, my group did respond and validate my feelings, but I was still spinning. So here's why this happens. When you vent in the group chat, you do get a little bit of short term relief. There's always a ton of research going on in this area, and we're learning more each day. But basically, neurobiologically, that is a dopamine spike. Your brain says, oh, I did something, I shared it. People responded supportively, ding, 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 reward system activated. And because you have activated the brain's reward system and had that chemical response, you're reinforcing the desire for that experience in the future, even though it's not actually helping you. You associate the venting with feeling better, but it is not the same thing as processing the experience and solving the problem. So eventually the group chat does respond, and the more your friends pile on with, you're right, he's the worst, the more activated you actually get. Your friends are showing support and loyalty, which is lovely. But what this exchange is also doing inadvertently is turning up the emotional volume on your stress cycle. There's even research showing that repeated emotional reactivation without resolution keeps your nervous system in a state of stress. You're basically marinating in the same feelings over and over and calling it processing when it's not. It can also feel misaligned with our values in some cases. So, some of my top values are kindness, humor, and compassion. And I knew when I was unloading in the group chat, I was totally drowning that part of me out by committing to the spiral and coming up with mean things to say about this guy. And that's the thing. We feel best when our actions align with our values, but sometimes in the moment, it feels easier and we think it will feel better to indulge in the spiral. That's human. But if all we ever do is spiral, we never get around to building the kind of clarity that actually feels good in the long run. So let's talk about the difference between venting and processing. Venting is like cranking up a space heater. It makes you feel better in the moment. You are warm and cozy. But the second you leave the little room that you're in, the rest of the house is freezing. So dragging the space heater around from room to room is not fixing the insulation in your house, which means the second the heater goes off, you're cold again. The group chat moves on to someone else's drama, and you are left right where you started. And literally and metaphorically, if you only rely on space heaters to keep you warm, you risk blowing a fuse or burning the house down. Processing, on the other hand, is insulation. It takes more effort. It's kind of boring. It looks a little messy. Maybe you're having to cut out some drywall to see what's going on in there. I've never replaced insulation myself, so I'm really making it up at this point, but you get the idea. Once you've got insulation in place, you are less reliant on the space heater and less susceptible to blowing a fuse. But venting tricks us because it feels productive in the moment. You hit send, you see all those little typing bubbles pop up, your friends affirm you, and for a second you think, okay, I did something. But if that's the end of it, you are right back where you started, only now with the same problem and a chat thread 47 messages long that you'll probably reread later and re-trigger yourself with, most likely in the middle of the night when there is nothing left to scroll on TikTok. This doesn't just happen in group chats. Think about emails, Teams messages, or social media comments that you felt reactive to, and you go back and reread them and get hyped up, trying to solve a problem you can't quite articulate. You just know that you feel bad. Now, I'm not anti venting, even after everything I just said. Venting does have its place. Expression is important. Bottling everything up forever isn't good either, but venting alone without moving towards perspective or action can actually reinforce the very thought loops that keep you stuck. So, this is where I just want to say out loud your friends are not your coach, and they shouldn't be. A coach's job is to reflect, reframe, and move you towards aligned action with permission. Friends aren't necessarily primed for that in the middle of a Tuesday night group chat. And honestly, even if your friends are professional coaches, they're still your friends in that context. When my friends share something that they're upset about that happened at work or whatever, I am much more likely to respond with like, "Wow, that's so messed up, like, screw that guy," rather than, automatically going to, "How might your stated values inform how you wanna show up in this situation?" When you're in a high state of emotional arousal, your brain's threat systems dominate. So your prefrontal cortex, the part that does nuanced problem solving and long-term planning, is still there, but it's suppressed, basically. You really can't access the same quality of thought in that state because the energy it requires is being diverted to your amygdala that thinks you're about to die. We have all heard this example before, but it bears repeating. If a predator is chasing you, it's important to react immediately and get away from danger. Our bodies want to respond the same way to the threat of someone shaming us publicly as they do to a tiger coming after us, because both feel like a threat to our lives. And when the tiger is chasing you, it's not useful in the moment to reflect on what aspects of the situation are in your control and how you'd like your values to inform your decision making. It is much more useful to just freaking run away or try to fight it off. That's why we need tools to be able to create some cognitive distance from the experience itself, to be able to give our brains a chance to come fully back online and engage the power of our prefrontal cortex to decide how to proceed. So, how do we actually do that? Here's what I recommend. Step one, give yourself permission to vent with a time limit. Say, I need 60 seconds to vent or 10 minutes or whatever works for you. The time limit for a single rant in a voice memo app is 28 minutes, if that is potentially helpful information for you. So set a timer, let it out, and then stop. Some people will realize that once they have permission to vent, the urge fades quickly. So experiment and just see what works for you and do not judge yourself if you need something different. All of this has to go through a discovery period, and your needs are going to vary depending on the situation. That's okay. Complex experiences, of course, can take longer to work through, but not always. So just see what you need. And the more you practice it, the more readily you'll recognize when you are ready to move on to step two. You will know you are ready when you've said all there is to say and you just start repeating yourself or have the urge to look for new people to tell. That is when it's time to move on. So, step two, bring yourself into a neutral, if not positive, emotional state. Before you try to problem solve, calm your system down. This is not some toxic positivity, like good vibes only stuff. But like we said earlier, you can't fully access the power of your rational brain when you're in a heightened emotional state. So it's crucial to turn down the heat first. There are tons of ways to downshift your body: breath work, a walk or a workout, art, music, EFT tapping, meditation. I personally like diaphragmatic breathing because it's like a shortcut for telling your nervous system, like, hey, you're good. There's no tiger. It's also one that you can do pretty much anywhere without drawing attention to yourself, even while you're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner and your weird uncle brings up politics again, and you start to feel yourself getting worked up. I notice sometimes clients will have resistance to exploring activities that might help them come to a more neutral state. And this can happen for a lot of reasons. So maybe they've tried meditating and it hasn't quote unquote worked. So now they feel frustrated and they don't want to be disappointed again, which I understand. Maybe they think they don't have time with all their other priorities in their lives. But who among us has not hidden in the bathroom for 5 minutes scrolling Instagram? I just saw an article, I forget what they call it, like bathroom camping. Interesting. So you do have time. You don't need mountains of time. I think we can get really psyched out of trying anything because we're like, okay, I just need like a full day to set aside to like really decompress, or if I could just get away for a weekend, it would be better. And we skip over the part where we could experiment with just a few minutes at a time because it doesn't feel as impressive or noteworthy. But those things actually are the building blocks that are really, really helpful and accessible no matter what. So don't skip those opportunities. Maybe for some other clients, they just like the connection that they feel with their friends when they rant and they want to stay mad for a bit. So that's also okay. I think it's really about just recognizing what is going on for you. And do you like what you're doing? And I would suggest that whatever is going on for you, just recognize it, be honest about it, and then be honest about whether you'd like to make a change. No one is going to make you change anything, including me. At the end of the day, you get to decide if something is a problem for you or not, and if you would like to address it or not. So that brings us to step three. Explore the experience from multiple angles and then decide how you'd like to proceed. So, do a 5 minute page dump in a journal, or if you're more of a verbal processor, record a voice note. Even if it's just for yourself, you'd be surprised, the insights that you can glean from that, just recording something that no one else is going to listen to. You don't need to share it with anyone else. It's just for you. You can share it if you want, it's totally fine. Just this is really about like getting into action and seeing what generates something for you. Before your hackles go up and you say you don't want to journal, the absolute number one source of resistance here is that clients will say they don't know what to write or say that's different from the venting period. So I will give you some prompts. And after I rattle these bad boys off, I will also go through and answer all of them through the lens of my recent experience I shared earlier to give an idea of what that might look like. So, first, what happened? Try to be objective. Next, what am I feeling? Where does it show up in my body? Then, what am I making it mean? And this one can be confusing. So that's why we're going to walk through an example. Then, what else could be true? Next, what are my options? How do I want to show up? What's in my control? What do I want to do now? So here's how it played out for me. First, what happened? This will sound different than the group chat rant. It's not like this effing guy just came up to me out of nowhere in front of everyone and said a bunch of nonsense and tried to make me look stupid, which is subjective. But rather, this person approached me and asked about XYZ, and I shared that I was unfamiliar with the process he was talking about, which is objective. So it's just, if you want to think about it like what a video camera would record happening, that is the vibe we're going for. So not including any subjective judgment language. Next, what am I feeling? How does it show up in my body? So for me, without drawing out all the details of the exchange, because it doesn't matter really, and even actually from the time when I first scripted this, this was still a pretty fresh interaction between then and now, the time that I'm actually recording it. More time than I would like has passed, admittedly. But what's really interesting is that relationship dynamic has completely changed. And I think that's a really cool example of how if we can approach, interactions where there's a perceived slight, if we can approach it more openly and just sort of assume positive intent and allow an opportunity for change, then we see that relationships do have an opportunity to evolve if that's what we want. So, what I felt in the moment was anger and confusion and also some fear. So, when I feel anger, it's in my chest, it's always tight, like something is going to burst out. That actually reminds me of a story years ago. My now husband and I were just dating, and we had very different views of what our cleaning responsibilities were. So, anyone who knows us personally is probably just snickering away right now. So we were doing premarital counseling ahead of our wedding, and I was freaking out that he hadn't loaded the dishwasher when he said he would. And the therapist said the classic therapist line of, and how does that make you feel? And I was like, I feel that he should do the fucking dishes. And she was like, that's not a feeling. And I was like, I don't understand the question. But now I do. So just practice naming what you feel emotionally and how it shows up physically. If you're angry, is your throat or chest tight? Does your face get hot? Does your stomach hurt when you're anxious or afraid? Do you feel lightheaded when you get confused? Do you feel heaviness when you're sad? Like, what is it? And then what am I making this mean? In my scenario, I have the choice to make it mean a variety of things. And my goal is to choose the one that is most helpful to me or the one that feels best to me when I think it. So, where I landed was there's a clear breakdown in training here, and I can help fix it, which feels better to me than the initial assigned meaning of I can never come back here. These people are so rude and they don't appreciate me. So, just to further expand on this, it must mean something to you or you wouldn't be having a reaction to it. So, for example, if you get employee engagement survey responses that say your direct reports think that you're like a leader because you are disorganized in meetings and you have a story about yourself that you're not disciplined enough to be organized and that makes you feel ashamed, you're going to have a really strong reaction to that feedback because you're making it mean something that you already feel bad about. Does that make sense? If you got feedback that you were like a so-so leader because your team complained that you don't bring enough iguanas to the meeting for everyone to play with while you talk, you would be bewildered, I assume, but you wouldn't absorb it as meaning something relevant and negative about you, unless you're like a zookeeper who really was supposed to bring iguanas to the meeting and actually forgot to. And if that is you, then I apologize for exploiting your pain. Moving on. What else could be true? There's usually more than one thing going on when a person chooses to behave the way they do. It is true of everyone else and of you and of me. We are all navigating the world from our own playbook written from our own experiences, only we expect everyone else to follow the same playbook despite having different experiences. So you can never fully know what's driving a person's behaviors, but you feel differently based on the different thoughts you choose to cultivate about any interaction that you're having with someone else. Since we usually default to thoughts based on our own playbook, this requires that you prompt your brain to come up with some believable options that feel less emotionally charged if necessary. So for me, I had already established the what I'm quote unquote making it mean earlier by saying there's a process breakdown and I can help fix it. And I wanted to brainstorm a few other thoughts around the person I specifically engaged with rather than just almost bypassing and talking about the process in general and not the exchange itself, which I experienced, frankly, is very rude and unsettling. I think this is where we can kind of get tripped up with like toxic positivity, trying to force your brain to focus on a different aspect of the problem, which is, the process breakdown in my case, when you know that that's not the real issue and your brain isn't falling for it. The core of my issue in this example was that I didn't like the way I was being spoken to. So I needed to come up with some what else could be true statements about the person I was lambasting in the group chat. Where I landed is this person is busy and juggling a lot. And while I don't like his tone, he's probably not literally out to get me, which feels believable to me. And we all have bad days sometimes. It's another one that I also believe. So, another trick I like to use is to pretend that I'm an anthropologist and just say, like, how interesting that that's how that person behaves. It's very different from my own behaviors, but it seems normal to them. How interesting. The key is that it has to be believable or your brain will reject it. So, keep that in mind as you're coming up with your alternate thoughts. Next, what are my options and how do I want to show up? What is in my control? So, this is where you want to focus on your locus of control, which is mainly just your own response in any situations. You don't control the world, and regrettably, neither do I. I have checked. There's no wrong answer here. It's just about asking how you want to show up and what's going to give you the best chance of getting the outcome that you want, knowing that that is not fully in your control. The only thing that's ever in your control is how you respond to situations you encounter, period. So in my scenario, it would have been very easy to default to, I don't ever want to see that man again. So I'm just never coming back here. Problem solved, right? That's one option. But I really like being a part of the organization and I want to keep going. And obviously I have kept going. The relationship has changed now that we're, better acquainted. So at the time, just saying I'm not going to go anymore didn't feel like a real option that I would consider. But it's also important to me to speak up when something uncool happens, and I won't tolerate being bullied ever, period. I knew I wasn't just going to ignore it either because I'd just be completely freaked out about potentially running into this person again in the future. So no one should have to live like that if you're like afraid they're going to be around every corner. Considering all of those options, then the next question is, what do I want to do now? You get to choose how you respond, if at all. You can also choose not to do anything. Inaction is a type of action, right? So sometimes a feeling is just a feeling and it doesn't have to be a problem unless it's something that you want to change. I decided in my case that I would send a direct and polite message about it. I wasn't snarky, it wasn't to prove a point or act holier than thou. And it actually went over really well and led to a stronger sense of connection and purpose within the organization. And that, brings us to where we are today. By the time I'm recording this, I'm like, oh yeah, we're totally good, right? So it could have gone much differently if I had chosen a different response. Not that I'm going to go out of my way to cross paths with the dude that prompted the whole thing, but I'm also not living in fear that I'll be in the crosshairs again or like, a jump scare if I turn the corner in case he's going to be there. I've run into this person multiple times since then. It's completely fine. And there is no fear response for me anymore, which is great. So I felt like I spoke up for myself successfully, which was important to me. I advocated for my needs and I didn't let heightened emotions run the show. So all around, it was a win in my book. Now, if I had only vented to the group chat and not pursued the additional reflection after the fact, I probably would still be stuck in the like, F that guy, they don't deserve me, I'm never going back territory, which only hurts me because I want to keep going. Does that make sense? So, final thought here, use your group chats intentionally. Send the memes, share stories, and vent when you need to. It's totally fine, but do it with eyes wide open about your intentions and set a cap on it if the intention is just to vent. This is for your own benefit, so you don't keep working yourself up over the same thing over and over because your body experiences it as a new event every single time. It's like you're reliving it. When you're ready to move beyond venting and into processing and aligned action, try out those prompts that I shared and see what comes through for you. You might be surprised and you will almost certainly feel more clear about how you want to proceed. If you are already mid spiral in your group chat, maybe drop this link instead of message number 13. I don't know, just an idea. I'll see you next time.